I witnessed something in the emergency room that has haunted me every day. I have not shared this with anyone until now. I woke up with a pounding headache and a dry mouth. Not an uncommon morning condition for my college days. I looked around the unfamiliar bedroom until I found my phone. It was 11 a.m. on Sunday. I sat on the edge of the bed and began to put my clothes on. I noticed I was not alone. My heart started to race as I attempted to recall the previous night's drunken events. To my relief, I recognized the girl next to me as one of my friends as she rolled over in discomfort from the sunlight. I grabbed my shoes and started to put it on. Something was wrong. White hot pain shot up my leg as the inside of my shoe made contact with my big toe. I winced as I forced the Nike sneaker over my swollen foot. I threw my jacket on and made my way to the door. I immediately fell to the floor as soon as I put pressure on my right foot. I heard a burst of laughter from the girl behind me. "Still a little drunk, eh?" I replied, "No, my foot is killing me. I think something is wrong." "What did you do to it? You were fine last night when you were running around downtown," she asked. I recalled the memory of the previous day. "Oh damn, I was running? I got my big toenail removed because of that soccer injury from the intramural game. The doctor told me to take it easy. I must have not thought about it after I was drinking. My foot was still numb from the anesthetic." "Ouch. Well, go home and take care of it," she said. I sighed and said goodbye and left. Being a dumb college kid, I limped the entire 2 miles back to the shack my college roommates and I called home. I immediately sat down and started drinking to curb the hangover. It wasn't until later that night someone decided to talk some sense into me. We had some friends over, and one girl, who happened to be a pre-med, noticed my limping. "What happened to you?" she asked. I had a minor surgery in my foot, and it just hurts. I could barely put my shoe on this morning," I replied. She got a closer look at my leg. "Oh my god, you need to go to the hospital. You see those red streaks running up your leg? That's blood poisoning." She grabbed my arm and rushed me to a car. She was nice enough to drop me off at the front door of the ER. Half drunk, I limped inside and was immediately wheeled back to a room. This began the strangest night of my life. The ER of the university hospital was especially crowded. I was put into a room that was already occupied, with a plastic curtain separating me from the other patients. The occupants of the room caught my attention. There was an unconscious man on the other bed, stiff as a board and drained of all colour. Next to his bed was a woman, extremely thin, with a sunken face and tattered grey hair, and looked like she hadn't slept in years. She sat frozen in her chair. Sitting in front of the couple was a tall male nurse, an EMT, and a police officer. The woman gazed forward with a blank stare as the cop spoke to her. "Ma'am, you need to tell us what your boyfriend took. He's going to die, but we may be able to save him if you just tell us. We want to hear it in English. Can you do that?" The woman didn't respond. The interrogation went on like that for a while, and the woman continued to stare forward with her unwavering gaze. Finally, my nurse came back in to hook up an IV to me. She spoke. "This should help with the infection, and will help sew you up a bit." I looked at her, and she winked at me. She leaned in and whispered to me, "Sorry about the patients next to us. Try and ignore them if you can." She returned to a normal volume. "The hospital is pretty crazy tonight, so the resident doctor wants me to work on getting this infection out of your foot. You're lucky this didn't reach your lymph nodes. Sepsis is no joke. I'm going to have to make an incision on your toe and drain out the infection. I'll numb you with a local anesthetic first." I grimaced as she stuck the long needle into my toe. "I'll be back in 15 minutes when you're numb," the nurse said as she left. I looked out to the hall as she walked out. I noticed another police officer just outside, and he was talking with a priest. It was not uncommon to see priests around campus. The university was Catholic. But I found it strange that he was right outside my hospital room. The man on the bed next to me had not moved. Maybe he was going to die and they were going to read him his last rites. My heart was racing. I had never witnessed a death before. I turned my gaze from the hall to the curtain next to me. Just behind it was the strange woman, but she was now staring directly at me with her dull, grey eyes. I quickly turned away from her. I felt eyes pierce through me as an icy shiver crept down my spine. My nurse returned and started setting up a prep table. She sterilized the scalpel and my toe and began cutting. I couldn't look. I'm not very good with that sort of thing. Without thinking, I turned my head to the right again. The woman was still staring at me. As soon as our eyes met, I had the strangest vision. It was like I started daydreaming, but it was so vivid. I imagined myself taking the scalpel and stabbing my nurse with it over and over again. I heard the sounds of her screams and saw the horrific, bloody mess. I yelled aloud, "No!" I snapped out of the daydream. I was horrified with what I had just imagined. I was not a violent person at all. I had never even thought about anything that graphic in my life. My stomach began to turn with nausea. Concerned with my outburst, the nurse asked me if I was okay. I told her I was, and she continued. I looked to my right again at the withered woman. She was still staring at me, but now was smiling an eerily wide smile. It was like she was amused at my discomfort. I turned away and decided not to look back. The nurse finished, wrapped my foot, and told me she would be back later to check on me. As she left, more medical personnel entered and wheeled away the man who was on the bed. They had draped a sheet over his body. The police officer and priest walked in and closed the door. The priest gave me a slight nod as he walked by. I noticed my cross necklace was exposed through my hospital gown. The two men walked behind the curtain. I jumped in fright as soon as I heard it. The woman started hissing and screaming as soon as she saw the priest. The police officer spoke. "Cut that out or I will arrest you." The priest interjected. "No need for that at the moment. Miss Bayer, my name is Father DeMarco." I heard the woman spit. He spoke again, but this time it was in a different language. I hadn't been to church in a while, but some of the Latin caught my ear. I heard nomine, which I know means name. To my amazement, she responded. The words hissed out of her mouth at an incredible rate. She spoke in Latin, just as the priest had. When she stopped, the cop spoke. "This is how she was talking when we found her, Father. What is she saying?" The priest replied, "I need you to leave us. Take the boy." The cop then walked over to me. "Let's get you to another room, son. This woman has been through a lot tonight." I was happy to leave. I just wanted to be out of there. I got out of my bed and climbed into my wheelchair. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as the woman spoke aloud in English. "Your mother misses you, David." She then let out the most terrifying laugh I have ever heard. As the cop wheeled me out of my room, I could hear her maniacal laughter trailing off behind me. My eyes welled up with tears as I reflected on two things. First, my mother took her own life a few years ago. Second, and even more disturbing, none of the medical staff in that room had said David aloud.